Hello, everyone. My name is Gerard Thomas, and I'm back again with another one. Today, I'm here with 21 questions that was created for the sole purpose of finding common ground between police officers across the United States. I'm also here with Hey Blue, which facilitates moments of meaningful connections between police officers and the community they serve. And I'm also a student council member in Word is Bun, which was also created to give strong voice for and from our youth to stand strong in our communities. And shout out to Kari Brooks. She is not here today, but I am back. And I'm Gerard Thomas. I'm 17. I will be attending the University of Alabama next year for political science and pre-law, and I'm a high school senior. And today we have Edwin Raymond, the best to ever come. So everyone, please just how you doing?
What's up, Jar? How you feeling, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's great to have you here. So how is everything going? Go ahead and just introduce yourself and speak to the people so they can just get to know you.
So my name is Edwin Raymond. I am a lieutenant here in New York, but I am speaking as a private citizen, not on behalf of the department. I've been in law enforcement for just over 12 years. I'm today in the rank of lieutenant. I'm a police whistleblower, so I've already seen the issues in the system. I tried to fix those things internally for years. It fell on deaf ears, so I was pretty much forced to have to make some noise. Got some changes, still trying to get some more, and that's basically my story. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you for telling us, and I have questions for you. I know you have questions for me, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So my first question to you is, do you believe this fight that you're fighting will cultivate change for generations to come?
That's a great question. Absolutely. One of the things that I could have never predicted when I became a whistleblower was the support from law enforcement. Traditionally, law enforcement has a culture where you're just not supposed to speak out. So that's what I really prepared for. I prepared to be ostracized. I prepared to be the rat. I prepared to get disinvited to things, and just really just no longer be accepted. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that did occur, but the thing that I never expected was just the support from so many people, so many cops, first in the NYPD, and then cops throughout the nation, and then eventually even other parts of the world. And that's when I realized, you know what? I think I'm in a very, very unique and special place. I have a very special burden.
Yes, sir. I just want to understand. So why do they, once you become a whistleblower, um, why is it an issue when you speak of change in a way, um, for you to have like some type of, stigma on your back where they can't keep supporting you in a way? So why is that?
It's just about the culture. You understand? It's a brotherhood. It's like going against the brotherhood. It's seen as being disloyal. And that's a very closed-minded, short-sighted view. Because then when you think about it, the things that I'm trying to change, obviously it benefits the community, but it also it improves the quality of the work environment for the police officers, because officers are forced to basically treat people as numbers, to advance in their careers, to get the sergeant off their back, etc. Once we take that out of the recipe, you get just a better, more holistic, better policing. But unfortunately, many of them just couldn't see it that way. And it is what it is. It's the culture. It's literally what I prepared for. Like I said, the best part, the most unexpected part in this journey has been the support.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. So question number two. When people work with you, do they define you as an activist and not a fellow officer who brings law and order to the NYPD? Or how do you keep this target off your back?
It's both. Some people, they work with me. Some people, they try to hide it, but body language speaks loudly. The microaggressions, other gestures, you'll see that they're not excited about me being in the room, especially about me being in the rank of lieutenant. Part of my story, my own cop set me up to try to stop my promotion, probably really try to end my career. But then also, I always get officers that are excited that I'm their supervisor. And the best, again, To me, the best thing is when someone works with me as a subordinate, and maybe 2-3 months into it, they'll come up to me, and whenever there's like a private setting, and they say, "Boss, can I talk to you?" I said, "Of course. What's going on? You need time off work. You need something." They're like, "Nah, just you know, I'm not gonna lie. When you walk through the door, there was a lot of people, speaking ill of you, and I kind of just jumped on the bandwagon. But now that I've actually gotten to know you, I'm glad to call you my lieutenant. So I get a lot of that also, and I appreciate all of it.
Yes, sir. And that is great to know. And it's also what you going back to when you became lieutenant. So watching Crime and Punishment, did it have to do a lot with your color and having dreads?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, right? There's a look for police officers, right? And it's
Yes.
usually an older, white male, usually a little tall, Irish, Italian descent. So when people say you don't look like a cop, I don't take it personal. There is a look for cops, but people need to understand that look exists because of discrimination. Because if you weren't Irish, Italian American, or a white male, you really had a hard time getting on the job. You really couldn't get hired. So immediately walking through the door, yes, someone like me will stand out. I'm dark skinned. I have long hair. I stand out. From the day I stepped foot in the academy, I saw the stares from the instructors. And the academy is like a boot camp setting where they kind of mess with you on purpose. It's supposed to build discipline. So I was often a target when the instructors needed someone to mess with.
Yes, sir. And thank you for helping me understand that, because I was just thinking it has to do a lot with bias as well. What people have a misconception of what they think a person should look like, not going off the intelligence and the brilliance that you have.
Yeah.
You're a very extraordinary young man, and that is a lot.
Thank you.
So, question number 3 I have for you. Why are so many officers afraid of speaking up, but most of all change?
I think most are afraid of those who realize change is necessary are afraid of speaking because it's just not easy. Imagine speaking up, but then you have to respond to a situation where you need backup, or it gets very crucial and serious at work, and people might not trust you. I mean, there's so many different things. And ultimately, again, it's going against the brotherhood. So for that reason alone, people are just going to see you as odd, and they just won't trust you. You'll be taken out of the family. They won't see you as one of them anymore. And for those that refuse to see that there are issues that need to be changed, they're just closed-minded folks. They're in denial. They refuse to open their minds and open their eyes. And worst part is they refuse to listen to people who are on the receiving ends of the system, the detrimental parts of the system, who are saying that things are not the way it should be. I think that's the biggest disservice and disrespect when an adult or even a young person is telling you, officers, things are not being done right. Government, things are not being done right, and yet you just disregard what people are experiencing. So unfortunately, there are some people that just can't see any issues.
Wow. And a lot of people just do not want change and feel like it's not necessary. And that's just upsetting to me, because I'm like, as a young man of color, I will be going into political science and law.
Awesome.
So I will be going after change. And knowing that you can't do nothing because the other person thinks that the change doesn't need to happen is very upsetting.
Oh yeah.
A lot of ways.
And that's a big part of the problem. If we can't name and frame the issue, how are we gonna, attack it? How are we gonna do anything to solve it? That's a big part of the problem. The leadership, in a lot of police departments, because of the way police culture and overall American culture is set up, they fail to even see that there's an issue in the first place. It's insane,
Yes, sir, and I 100% agree. Question number 4 I have for you. What made you speak up?
I mean, I tried internally at first. I figured, I was naive. I was 22 when I became a cop, and I assumed if I was blue that my perspective would be respected. My perspective would be embraced. It would be encouraged. I can understand why because sometimes you kind of need to hear it from a particular person. So I figured by becoming law enforcement, I can be that person. I was naive. The leadership didn't want to hear it. They didn't care. It was just, this is what it is. You're going to get yourself in trouble trying to make all this noise for, just play the game. It was one of the first things I heard from the academy, even till today, just play the game. And I always say this is not a game. People's lives, real lives are affected, lives, especially people who look like me. This is not a game. Our lives are being derailed by these systems. So I spoke out when I reached a level of frustration where I was just like, I didn't really focus on me anymore. I knew what the results might be, and I was willing to take those risks for you. I spoke out for you.
Thank you. And it takes a lot. It's kind of like being, like you said before, being pointed out. Now everyone is watching you, either in a good way or in a bad way. So it's very crazy and ironic to know that, you're taking all of this, but you're paving the way for so many young men in generations to come. So that is awesome. So question number 5 I have for you. Since this fight, have you ever wanted to give up, or has someone close to you made you feel that you are doing too much?
I'll answer the second question first. Absolutely. And it's not, and sometimes it's out of love, it's out of care, it's out of concern, because this is crazy. I worked so hard to get to where I'm at. I didn't have the best childhood. My mother died when I was 3 years old. My father's an immigrant who didn't speak any English. He wasn't educated. I had no cushion. I had no safety net. I had to make every choice. Every choice had to be the right choice. I had no room for error, and I did it. I survived a very difficult environment, high crime area, low income, a lot of poverty, and everything that comes with poverty. And yet I did it. And here I am playing with my career, is what someone told me. You work so hard to get out of poverty, Edwin. Someone needs to speak up, but it's not you. You're not the person to do it. You have no parents, man. Like you let someone who, if in case they were to lose their jobs, they could fall back on mommy and daddy. Let that person speak up. You're not the person to do this. So I heard things like that a lot. But yeah.
Did your community, because you now you have a lot of people to fall back on. Your community supports you. I support you. Hey, Blue support you. So you have so many people to fall back on, because you're a powerful man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the community definitely showed up. The community, the activists, the elected officials, they showed up. And this is something that normally doesn't happen. Police officers are usually in limbo, right? It's
Yes.
like the community hates you because of the way the system is. And so you have to be good with the brotherhood. Once the brotherhood turns its back on you, that's just you. But thankfully, I believe my story has shown that that's not necessarily the case. Not all of the brotherhood turned their backs on me. A lot of police officers do support me, citywide, nationwide, and even worldwide. And just like you said, the community, people like you, have supported me, and I'm thankful for it. I jumped without a parachute, and you guys made sure that I landed properly. So I appreciate you're my parachute. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just move on to question 6.
The first part of the question. What was it again?
Oh, since this fight, have you ever wanted to give up?
I get different versions of that question, and which is what keeps you going. I can't say I ever wanted to give up, but I do play with the idea of what would life be if I did. And it's a beautiful burden. I understand that so many lives will be positively affected if I'm successful, that I can't even think about giving up, man. I can't. I have to get this accomplished. I've already started. There have been some shifts, some changes because of my whistleblowing. I am running for city council now to keep the momentum going. Um, I want to keep this going, and I want to leave something for the posterity, for the future, so the example can already be there. It won't be something so far-fetched anymore. Speaking out and landing properly, speaking out and still being able to have a successful career if you wish. So yeah, I don't think about it in a way of something that I'm realistically going to do, but I do envision a life had I never spoken out, and also a life if I chose to not continue using my voice in this way.
Wow, you just gave me chills.
Thank you.
Because that lets me know that we have no room to give up whatsoever. You have to keep the fight going and keep making effective change in so many different areas because, like you said before, a lot of people are dependent on you. So you are the light in the darkest time.
Wow.
All righty. So do you think the police department across the U.S. voted now to be more accepting to your others whistleblowing?
So
Doing others
do I
whistleblowing.
think more like, so basically does police culture accept someone like me more today? Um, no, the culture is deep. The culture is very deep rooted. You'll find individuals in police departments, yes, but in terms of entire departments or the police culture, absolutely not. We have not crossed that lap yet. We still have a lot of work to do before we're at the point where whistleblowing is embraced. It's not. It's just not.
Mm, absolutely. All right. So question number 6. Have you seen any change in the culture of the NYPD since Edward Garner?
There have been some procedural changes culturally. Cultural changes, slight changes. Yeah, there have been some changes. I can't to say there haven't been any would be a lie. It's just not deep rooted enough. Literally, someone can come, be commissioned, and things will revert right back to what they were. So we still have a long way to go, but there have been some changes. Yeah.
Okay. So could you go deeper into that? Like, what type of changes have there been? Any change for minorities in a way, or
Minority officers or people in the community?
no minority officers?
Hmm. Well, right now, historically, we have a lot more supervisors who are minorities in New York and some departments across the nation. But I'm big on the rule. The reality is it doesn't matter. A system is a system. Anyone can contribute to a system. And to be transparent, I've seen, I know white cops, friends who are great officers despite not coming from the city, despite being from the suburbs. And I know cops born right in the hood like me, who the worst things that ever happened to the police department, worst thing that ever happened to the community. So simply having minorities in in certain positions is only cosmetic. You need the people with the right minds, and that might come from someone who's a minority, and it might not. You need the right minds in the right positions, not the right. It's not about skin color. Intuitively, you would think if someone is of a community and understands the community and understands the culture, if they were to get into key positions, they would be there for the community in very, unorthodox ways. But that's not what I've watched. Not really. No.
Wow, that is deep.
It's unfortunate, you know.
That is, and that brings me to, because when you think of it, you would think a minority will be able to understand the heartache that everyone feels, and sometimes those are the backstabbers, and sometimes your key players in some of the ways. And
It's
other
quite
times,
it's quite tribal. You know, you want to belong. When you're a police officer, you end up spending so much time at work with coworkers that a lot of people, it becomes the center of their universe. You know, there's even clothing. You know, like when I first became a cop, you didn't find clothing that, you know, it's like it's a whole cult now. You know, so when you want to really feel like you belong, you you start to even abandon everything that made you who you were prior. I've seen it happen so many times in political perspectives that shift. Um, you know, I've watched minority officers use language. I'm like, yo, you talking about your own mother right now? Like, are you serious? You know, but they don't see it that way. But that's a whole deeper conversation. We'll need like 42 questions. We need to double the amount of
We
questions
will.
into that.
Okay, so we'll just go on.
Yeah.
All right, so question number 7. Has the police department gotten closer since the horrific events of 2020 and 2021, or has the department become more divided?
Oh, I think one of the things that I started seeing, even with implicit bias training, I've watched officers shocked when minority officers have opinions that reflect more of what the community feels and not what the culture usually spews.
Oh,
You know, so I've watched that. So in light of everything that has occurred, I've watched cops who love each other, you know, for years, partners, friends, become not, I wouldn't say enemies, but I wouldn't call them friends anymore. A lot of because you get so many minority officers who kind of go with the flow, play the game. Um, 2020 has caused so many officers to become outspoken in ways that people who are loyal to the brotherhood are shocked. Their feeling is, you're a cop, you know, you're just like me. Why are you why are you signing on to this liberal nonsense? You know, and then I've read it on Facebook groups. You know, those cops say, well, I'm still a black woman, I'm still a Latina, I'm still someone of color who understands what these things are, who went through these things before having the luxury and privilege of being able to pull out a badge so it can stop. You know, today I get pulled over, I get to show my police ID, and whatever would have happened, 99.9% of the time won't. You don't have that luxury. You know, other people don't have that luxury. And even getting pulled over, I mean, now since whistleblowing, I would honestly say if I get pulled over, I'm usually recognized. But before that, there's a difference even there in how you're treated.
wow.
You know, like one time I was on the phone with a fellow cop, a white cop, and I got pulled over, and he was shocked when I told the guy I was on the job, which is police language for I'm a cop also, and I showed him my badge, and he then asked for my identification card. It's a lot harder to get the ID card than it is a badge. And the white cop was shocked. He was like, "Yeah, I've never been asked for my ID after showing my shield." You know, I said, "Yeah, you get pressed a little harder when you look like me."
Wow. So, in my opinion, I believe, I'm not there. I'm not in the police lane. I'm not at the police department.
Yeah.
But I would think that it probably would get more closer because you will have that brother relationship saying, okay, I'm with you 100% if you're on that verge. But some people don't see it in that way. And getting into a type of status of having that, brotherly love, like my brother is my keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that you guys are, some people are losing that type of connection is just shocking.
Yeah, well, that tight connection is already part of the culture, But these current events, like the protests, the mass protests across the world after the tragic killing of Mr. George Floyd. Um, I don't know too many. I don't think I don't know any officers that justify, that try to justify what happened to Mr. Floyd. But the protests that followed, it made a lot of officers just feel it exacerbated the us versus them issue that already exists. So if you weren't completely with us. If you were saying anything that comes from them, it was just like, oh no, we don't like you anymore.
And did that happen with the Capitol?
Ooh, the Capitol was one of the most uncanny things ever, because what you have is a lot of people in those crowds were retired or active law enforcement and military, who are usually part of that brotherhood of blue,
Mm.
who were attacking the blue, which it raised the question: was it really about supporting the blue, or supporting what the blue does to certain people? Because if it was about supporting the blue, why are you trying to gouge out a cop's eyes? Why do you have this officer pinned to the point that they can't even breathe? And why are officers getting attacked if it was really about supporting the blue? So that exposed a lot of what people have felt all along, which is, it's not about blue lives as much as just about not respecting black lives, if that makes sense. And I
It's more
remember
for white.
in a meme, it said, someone puts up a sign that says Black Lives Matter, right?
Yep.
And some people say all lives matter. But then some go as far as to say blue lives matter. So it's not really about all lives. It's about the word black, because you can't be all lives matter and blue lives matter at the same time. And Black Lives Matter is not to the exclusion of others. It's basically saying this is when we need to pay attention, because we've had ongoing situations where we've shown that Black lives just don't matter as much.
Mm. And it goes down to also when you watch a cop with or anybody with a Blue Lives Matter, we think about white supremacy, because it's an outrooted thing of saying, well, I know where I stand. I see a lot of people, even with my job, come through the drive-through with Confederate flags and Blue Lives Matter, and you're like,
to be clear, though, not all, like some cops is just about, again, supporting the brotherhood. Some cops is not necessarily because it's about white supremacy to them. But what you said matters. Why is it someone who displays a Confederate flag? Why do they feel comfort in the blue, the thin blue line flag? Those things are not interchangeable. They're not supposed to be interchangeable. One is to mourn officers killed in the line of duty. That's what that flag is supposed to be, by the way. It's been incorporated as the Blue Lives Matter flag, but it's really a mourning band, mourning flag. That has nothing to do with the Confederate flag. But yet you see those things together, and that's something, to me, that's alarming. If I was someone who displayed the mourning flag, I would be very bothered by the fact that people who display the Confederate flag feel a connection to me, because those things just are not supposed to be related.
and see, I never knew that. And a
Yeah.
lot of young people, and that's why I think a lot of young people, especially young people of color, we tend to get upset when we see Blue Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes to an anger point where we just can't stand anyone that works in the police department,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just like, I cannot look at you if you have a Blue Lives Matter on your, we think of the worst. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's not good. And not knowing, like how you just told me, and basically educated me on that point of view, because I never knew
Yeah,
what it really meant.
it's a mourning flag. Mourning band is what we call it here in New York. And it's basically when someone is killed in the line of duty, we wear a black band that covers the seal of the city, not the badge number. It's not supposed to cover the badge number. That's a whole other issue. It covers up the seal of the city, and depending on who the person is and where the person worked and where you work, you wear it for a certain amount of days. It's a mourning band. That's what it's supposed to be. It's just been adapted into something much deeper.
Okay, because we need that for the young black and the young white as well, for us to all know the actual meaning of that flag. Alrighty, so we can just go ahead and jump into question 8.
Mm-hmm.
What can you teach me as a young man of color, but also as a young man of color from the other side?
From the other side, what do you mean?
Like working inside the police department.
Okay.
I want to join, if I want to be a criminal defense attorney, for example, what could you teach me to make sure I maneuver or I be successful with my cases, making sure I find the correct evidence? And
well, as a defense attorney, you're trying to clear your client of charges. Best case is to get the case dismissed. If not, then lessen the charges. From a law enforcement perspective, that's an odd question. Because law enforcement is supposed to bring the evidence, including the person that's being charged, to the prosecutor for prosecution. That's the person on the other side of the bench. I mean, it goes across the board. You're supposed to be honest, have integrity in your work. Just have integrity in your work. Personally, I don't know if I could have been a defense attorney for different reasons, which is odd because people that don't know who I am will question my moral foundation because I joined the police department, but yet criminal defense attorney, they don't care. The person could defend someone that we all know did it. I know that's not supposed to exist in the way the system is set up. And that person's integrity is never questioned because everyone is supposed to have the right to due process, habeas corpus. But if you join the police department, your moral fiber is automatically in question. I always found that odd. Just have integrity. That's all I can say. But it's, again, as a criminal defense attorney, sometimes all the evidence is saying your client did it. Personally, I couldn't try to get someone off if I know they did it. So that's why I couldn't do that job. But it's the land, the law of the land. Everyone has a right to a trial.
And okay, so I have to make sure that I keep basically a fair play with all of it. But will the system try to cheat me in a way?
As a defense attorney?
Yes.
Well, it's about your client, not you. So of course the prosecutor, well, your job, remember, it's the prosecution's job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You just got to poke holes in the prosecution's story. So for you to be cheated, not necessarily, but are there things that prosecutors can do, prosecutorial misconduct? Of course, there are things that prosecutors can do that aren't right, aren't legal. So yes, it's possible that prosecutors can try to cut corners to simply get the conviction in a way that is not, in a way that cheats your client technically, because it's not right and it's not the law.
Okay, and then also, what could you teach me from your point of view and your experience in law enforcement of a young man of color?
This is tough because we're all human. We all have emotions. But I always tell people, no matter how much you disagree with the police officer's actions in the field, meaning they're at the situation, is not the time and place to fight it. You will have your day in court. There's also civil court. It's a process, but it's the better way to go. And if you can prove, the attorney can prove that the officer acted improperly, you will be paid. That's the system we have in place now. You will be paid either settlement or damages for the officer behaving improperly. It can cost you your life if you take certain actions in the field. And I don't want to see anybody, I don't want to see anybody hurt. So that's what I always tell folks.
Because also, when you think about it, if the officer in that wrongdoing, because in the community, when an officer is doing something like a pullover, and you have someone that, I didn't do it, or what are you pulling me over for? It's your right to speak and say, where's your badge number? Because it's more likely for you to either go in jail and reverting back to death, because you can't pay someone when their life is taken. And as a young man, a lot of young people don't know their rights that they have. So you will have that whole thing of, just go here, or we're just going to put you in jail tonight. And the people just walk away and just wait till the next morning. But how could you walk me through that process of how it should, go?
So you're right. You have a right to know why you're being stopped. And it puzzles me why officers aren't more transparent about that. Every time I've done it, it's, the person might disagree, they might vent, but you eliminate, it's almost disrespectful. Like, you stopping me, you're not telling me anything. So I don't police that way. And when I would do car stops, I don't operate in that fashion. I'm pretty straightforward, because as long as the stop is legal, what's the issue?
So intelligence of making sure. I said it's just making sure that it's off of intelligence.
Exactly. Sure. Exactly. So remember, an officer, as long as they're within certain parameters, they have the right to pull you over and question you about certain things. They can even ask accusatory questions, which is like, if there's something that happened and there's a description that the car matches or you match, they can ask you, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? But they're not supposed to violate your rights. But what are those rights? And those rights kind of vary from state to state. So there's no blanket answer there's certain things that are universal, but state to state, certain things do vary in how a car stop goes. So it's a little bit more complicated of a question.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. So question number 9. Excuse me. How do we as a nation move on from the past, but accept the new change that is around us?
Great question. And this is something that one of the things we didn't do that was done in other parts of the world that have had oppressive systems, and that's a truth and reconciliation. We need to be able to be honest about what has occurred and to have like real dialogue about what needs to be done to not forget what occurred, but never go back in that direction. So apartheid in South Africa, after apartheid was done away with, they had a deep truth and reconciliation. Even in Germany, with the Holocaust and so many other, nations and societies that have had oppressive systems, they've had to open dialogue. Because when you don't have that dialogue, what ends up happening is when people hear it from a source that they already are iffy about, they don't believe it. They don't trust it. Like, I would always have conversations about race with colleagues who are white, and they would always call and say, no, nonsense. No, there's no way that's true, Edwin. But then they'll do a quick Google search and they'll say, wow, I can't believe, like redlining, for instance. I've yet to meet anybody in the police department, well, younger cops around my age and younger, who even know what redlining is, and redlining is basically discriminatory practices in the housing market in terms of who can live where, who gets a loan, who gets approved for a loan, who doesn't, et cetera. And everything that came from redlining, like the creation of the ghettos in the hood versus the creation of the suburbs, they're shocked. Like, one of my white colleagues and friends, he said he always just thought, for whatever reason, Black people just ain't want to work. Democrats give them handouts so they can keep voting Democrat. Meanwhile, hardworking white conservatives pay for the whole system. I said, are you crazy, man? I said, you work out here. What do you see every morning? What do you see every afternoon in those subways? Because I was a transit cop. I said, you see thousands of people going to and coming from work. So where do you get that from? He's like, wow, I never thought about it that way. We got into a whole deep conversation. But with truth and reconciliation, it wouldn't have been his first time hearing about redlining. It wouldn't have been his first time hearing about the ways in which our nation has been quite discriminatory and oppressive towards certain groups. So when he or she has to get the additional information in terms of how it works in the police department and police systems, there wouldn't be the cognitive dissonance, which is this the refusal to accept new information that goes against what you already believe yourself, you know. So that's one of the things that we need: truth and reconciliation.
And I 100% agree with you on that, because I was just watching a Martin Luther King speech, and he was telling us about how he knows in the next generation to come that it will get worse before it gets better, because now they're going to make ghettos for Black people. We will be more suppressed. They will try to mess with us mentally, about teaching it in schools, because you're being taught by a teacher that's telling you this is the way the system works. This is what happened in history, and some people get the wrong history. And then you still have our brothers and sisters that's out there that's saying, I don't want to work with the government at all. I don't want to be involved. So I 100% agree. And thank you for, elaborating on that and giving us a true point of view. So question 10. I understand you're running for office. How do you intend to infiltrate old infections or practice or old rooted policies?
So, well, when it comes to policing, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay, so here in New York, and I would imagine most of the nation, the city council breaks up into committees, and the particular committee that oversees or works in tandem with the police department is the public safety committee. Each committee has a chairperson and other members. As the chair of public safety, right? The police, it's no longer an option to listen to me. They're compelled to now. Granted, I'm not the mayor, so I don't have the sweeping hand. But because of my knowledge of what goes on in the police department, the way that I've watched police leadership lie when they're being grilled by the public safety committee, I'm not gonna be able to do that over here. We're trying to get real change. So, I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but it's gonna be real change because I have the knowledge. The public safety chairperson has never been someone who's been in law enforcement, which to me is kind of a disservice. But unless you have members in the city council who have law enforcement experience, that you're going to keep getting that issue, which is why it's crucial that I become a city council member, so I can bring that knowledge, so we can get some real change. One of the beauties about New York is that many other police departments like to emulate and copy New York's policing strategies and policies. So if we can administer the antidote from here in New York, it will cause a ripple effect throughout the nation.
Because I never knew that.
Yeah, a lot of the issues in New York start throughout the nation have started in New York. For instance, broken windows policing is something I'm not a fan of. Quota-based policing. John Timoney, who became the head of Miami Police Department, he was a New York chief who brought the cancer from New York to Miami. The Ferguson report spoke of the way that town was policed by multiple police departments when they needed to meet their quotas and raise revenue for the city. They went right to Ferguson, where the poorest and blackest people lived. They got that from New York.
And why is that? Why do we tend to attack young minorities, especially people of color? Why is it, let's go get them, we have to get them off the streets, when we're really not the
it's because
we're the issue.
We're the powerless, when you have no political power, they get to play games with you like that, So there's a whole can of worms to open up. But to try to summarize it, we're what's called the proletariat, right? The proletariat are the people at the bottom of society, the people who are powerless. And because of the way this nation was founded and things that continue, that remains people of African descent. And it's just unfortunately what comes with being the proletariat until we take the necessary steps to change these systems.
Wow. And to go back on the powerless, when we say that, you don't feel it as much, like saying I'm powerless. I don't have as much power, political power. But if we could find it within ourselves, do you think the change will come within our communities of educating ourselves and saying that we have to learn this system to bring out the old and bad roots that it was founded on and to make a new change for generations to come?
Oh, there are ways we can get that power. You know, unifying and being civically engaged is a big part of it. But oftentimes, you know, we're left out of the process. To some places, there's voter suppression. Other places, people don't believe in the system, so they don't vote, which is another form of voter suppression. Um, and I'm not saying voting solves all the issues, but it is something that we shouldn't leave on the table. It is one of the things that we should try to definitely use to get the right people into key positions who can then make the decisions that can really overhaul things. You know, that's the objective. So it's not just voting and all your problems go away, but you vote for the right people, they'll get in there and they'll truly fight, you know, like what I'm trying to do in City Hall.
And I 100% agree with you. And that was all of my 10 questions.
Okay.
So now a word from our sponsors, CenterState Bank, Ben and Jerry's, big brothers and sisters of Central Florida, the Verdi EcoSchool, and the Hey Blue Initiative. Thank you all very much for sponsoring this program. And now, Mr. Edwin Raymond, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. I hope you were able to learn. I hope our audience was able to learn. Now it's my turn. So my first question for you is, do you believe that it's actually possible to get policing right? Like to actually fix the system to the point where people believe in, like don't see police as this occupying force and these people that are here to violate your rights, etc. That we have what's called procedural justice.
I believe it's possible.
Okay.
But the change has to come within the system. People have to be willing to change. It's kind of like the military when officers from the military or when they come home, you don't feel that, oh my God, he's an officer or they're in the military or anything like that. But the police department has to have real change. They have to have real people in there. It's breaking down into mental health, learning these officers. Because there aren't just, bad officers in the police department. You have good ones, just like yourself, that are really trying to fight for real change. It's just that the people that are in there are not highly educated and cannot educate others. But yes, we can make a huge difference within the police department.
Okay, so you believe change is possible? Because some people don't. Some people think we need to abolish the police. They don't think it is. Yeah.
If we abolish the police department, then we'll be in more chaos.
Yeah.
Not saying that we should have more police officers in the streets or in poor communities, but if you took away something that has a system, because when you have a home invasion or a crime scene, who do you call? You call the police. The people that you do not like. Okay. Those are the people that you call.
All right. So my next question is, what are your immediate thoughts when you see a police officer?
My immediate thoughts. I hope I do the right thing.
You're not gonna hurt my feelings, man. Go ahead.
That's what I always say. I hope I do the right thing. Because your immediate thoughts is, if this dude pulls me over, whoever it is, will I do the right thing to come home safely to my mom? Because as a young man of color, I'm not taught to be around an officer as much. We're taught that, when you see an officer, hands up, have your wallet, because they don't know your age. I was taught at the age of 12, keep your wallet in your back pocket with your ID. So to me, those are my immediate emotions when I see an officer. You start to feel a rude awakening, but you have to make sure that you're in the right position, in the right setting, you're speaking the right language for them.
Yeah. I know the feeling firsthand. I was there, man. I get it. It's not a positive feeling. You prepare yourself to be messed with. That's when I, at your age, when I was 17 and I saw a cop and I was approaching the corner, I literally psychologically prepared myself to be messed with, to be stop and frisked, to be questioned. It was a horrible way to live. Why don't you think people who are critical of policing join as a way to remedy what's going on? Like, basically, why don't more people do what I did, what I've done, what I'm doing?
I think, some people, it's a lot of talking, not enough action. And I won't say that more people of color will actually change it, but we had more people that were, making sure they got inside those type of rooms and those type of settings like you're doing, making sure that you get to those meetings and meet with those people that are in charge, that you're making a change to change someone else's life.
But why don't more people do it though? Like
it's hard to hear a young brother say, I want to be an officer. Yeah. And you probably won't hear that in our generation. A lot of people do not see themselves as an officer. They're like, what would I do? What will people think of me? That's the first reaction. Yeah. Because like I said before,
I went through that also.
Yeah. And a lot of fear is a main thing or a main inherent that we have. But, I would say way back when we did have Black officers. But, you have it within the community. So, yes, you have an officer saying, I will teach you this. But a lot of people have that. And then you have young people that think about pay. They're like, will I be paid enough for this job?
Okay. That's
fair. That's what I can give you for that one.
No, that's fair. So, I mean, you kind of answered this already. Do you think policing should be abolished?
No.
Okay. And why do you think racial disparities exist in policing? And what I mean by that is, why is it that when you look at statistics, certain minority groups are policed more aggressively? And I'm not talking about when it comes to violent crime, right? Because here in New York and many ports, cities, inner cities, there is a crime issue. We have to be frank. We have to be open and honest about that. But I'm talking about the nonviolent offenses that are done either equally across racial lines or sometimes even more by white folks. You get Black folks that are like, there's an over enforcement when it comes to Black people. Like here in New York, marijuana enforcement is one of those things. Like across racial lines, people smoke, people use marijuana. But when you look at the statistics every year of who's actually getting arrested, of who's actually getting ticketed, it's Black and Latino people.
Well, it's just like what I said before. Martin Luther King, he said it way back when. He said that they made these, it's basically media bias of what you see. It's just like you spoke about the Holocaust, when they put up these big signs about the Jews, that they're these big people, and when you see them, they're scary looking, and that's not the actual case. So with Black people, we have a reputation that's already put on us, or a stigma that's put on us automatically from the womb, of who they think we are. And it's not till you know that person. Because when you're young, you're at the age of 4 or 5, you're not looking at your best friend in a way of, is this person white or Black? It's when you get older that you continue to hear from your family and you hear people speak of it. And it's like, if a white girl and she says, Dad, I want to marry this Black man, you're not marrying that Black man. But why? He doesn't have an answer. And I believe it's just that we do have an uneducated system, that people aren't being taught true history. They're not being taught to learn and experience, because I hate that small-minded people keep those same small-minded mentalities around them. So we don't get enough openness within us. We don't teach ourselves to learn each other. It's more of, let me speak over you. because we don't hear each other when we speak.
Okay, and it perpetuates stereotypes, as you said before. Okay, my next question is, what would you say to someone who said to you that because of the amount of violence in Black communities, cops are justified in being more concerned for their safety?
They're wrong. Do you know why a Black man has to do the things he does in his community? Do you know why there aren't enough jobs? When you look in a Black community, you see enough banks in the community to first start off. Do you see enough jobs? When a Black man applies for the job, I'll call you back in 3 days. That's what they say, and next thing you know, you don't have a job. Or if you have that young person that has to take care of their whole family, and they don't have the means, or that parent can't work, or whatever's going on, that's why you have the crime rate so high, because it's just like, it's easier to go sell. And those same people, so if you're not understanding the true culture of what is going on in their own nature, the ghettos were made to have this type of warfare within our own people. But it takes our own people to end those type of things and to say we have our own. But I believe that we had less officers, because that's the problem too. You have so many people that feel we have all these officers, so you're going to basically build this war zone. So it's just a lot of stuff has to change within the policing in a way.
Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying. You're going deeper into the origins of the issue, which is understandable. But despite why it's happening, the reality is some communities are quite violent. You don't think that an officer,
Well, let me ask you,
go ahead.
have you seen any change since it's been more? If you put more officers in a community that has more crime, you would think that the crime rate will go down. And if you're an intelligent person, you would know that, okay, I'm watching this paper and I'm looking and the crime rate's still going up. If that isn't working, let me try something differently. Let's try to keep more people in a way of, let's see what the community wants in their community to see what change needs to be done.
Got it. Okay. Speaking of community, what role, if any, would you say you want police officers to play in the community? What should a police officer's role be in the community?
To serve and protect.
Okay.
To listen and respect. And to uphold the Constitution, what they took the oath under, and making sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Your job is your duty, but also be a human being, make people feel comfortable, and treat this community as though if you live in it, because that's the biggest thing too. Officers don't live in the community that they're harming or they're destroying, so they feel like, I'm going back home, I really don't care. But keeping those connections, because it's more than just being an officer in this uniform with a gun. You're changing lives. When you speak to a little kid, they're so happy to see you. So take that and run with it, saying that I'm changing someone's life. Changing lives as I continue to go in these communities.
And what attributes would you say, like what would you consider something that makes someone a good cop?
Being them, teaching, doing what you're doing, educating, giving young people a broader view of what it is to become an officer, teaching them, letting them know, yes, I do know your mom, or something like that, keeping them intact of saying, I am here to protect you. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to protect you. If you late to school, I'll drive you in the car. If you need a ride home, I'll take you home. If you don't have nowhere to go, I will take you to my home. Keeping that connection, being the person that you were supposed to be the moment that you wanted to take on this job, because you signed up for it. We didn't ask you to take it. You decided, I want to become an officer.
Okay. So you a more community oriented officer, I would say. That's what it sounds like. You want someone that's more about the community. Um, and there's no reason why officers can't do that. Because officers should be able to wear different hats. Um, but one of the biggest things is we should take some of those hats away. That officers are overburdened with responsibilities and the different things that are thrown at them. In that scenario, what about when that cop that does all that is faced with a situation where they have to take action?
That's your job. The same way I said is realistic, because those things can happen.
And yeah,
if you take the necessary precautions of doing what you're supposed to do, you're not a killing machine. You're not in the Marines, and that's the thing I hear about the training. They're training people to become Marines, and they're becoming killing machines. Well, you go off to the military, but you're supposed to protect and serve. You're put in place to make sure that people know you. The crime rate will go down in every community if everybody knew the officer. Because you will be like, oh, no, don't mess with him. They go, Officer Raymond. Don't do that.
Yeah. And it's a level of respect. That's how I police organically. But even with that, there are times where I'm in a situation where someone doesn't know me, and I have to take police action. And granted, I'm very different in the way that I police. I get the job done. I've had people that I've arrested who have later seen me with their children, and they make their whole family come give me a hug when I'm off duty, and because I don't take it personal, and the respect is always there. But again, speaking about the different hats, one of the common talking points these days is, let's not have officers respond to this or that. Let's have this other entity that's not law enforcement related. Do you think the community is truly ready to take on the responsibilities that they normally rely on police officers for? And we know like certain things like an armed burglar or something is not something you'd want the community. That's someone you need. I don't want to speak for you, but I would think you agree. That's the police officer. But other things, do you think the community is ready to take on those roles? Because it sounds good, but do you think the community is ready?
I mean, with the leadership and the grooming of everyone, you could.
Okay.
Because if you go to a white community, trust me, you won't see as much police officers in that neighborhood. Actually, in fact, they're living in those neighborhoods. So you will probably see less of that. So I believe that communities, especially minorities, the communities of taking action and speaking and having a true dialogue of saying we'll have those city council meetings with the officers and the community and speaking up, because it's just knowing your safety, make people comfortable, and that's the job, is to serve. You won't get it. Everybody won't be happy with you, but as long as you do what you're supposed to do and you keep your integrity and you keep your word, and your word is always your bond, then it's a done deal.
Awesome. And if you could address, right, a class of fresh recruits in the police academy, right? One of the things in the police academy here, different speakers come and address them. If you had that opportunity, what would you tell these fresh recruits just sworn, in 6 months they'll be out there policing? If you had an opportunity to speak to them, what would you tell them?
Use your intelligence. Make the right decision. Make the right decision like your life depends on it. Yes, you will have some screw ups. You're human, but make the right decisions. Be very intelligent. Be optimistic in ways of learning and keeping a broader mindset. Be learning. Keep learning. Learn, because you never know who will teach you, because you think you know everything now, but it's not until you go out into that road or you go into that field that you actually learn from the man that's sitting on the corner. He can teach you something. Get as much wisdom, so when you do have to make that stop or that arrest, you don't feel bad, or we don't have to go into this whole investigation, or you're on the news or social media saying what you have done, but you can make that right decision and say it was the best decision I made. We got a criminal, not a person of color, but just because of the color of their skin, but we got an actual criminal. White, black, Latino, Spanish speaking, anything, we got a criminal off the street, a burglar, a rapist. You got those type of people off the street, not just I have to get the status quo and I have to get these numbers up. No, you're going to make sure that you get the correct people off the streets, not just anyone, because that can lead to bigger issues within yourself.
Awesome. Okay. And final question. Do you think it's possible for someone who starts out their career negative in a negative way, just doing the worst things in the system? Do you think it's possible for someone like that to turn around and do things right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a religious man. So I believe that God gave me another chance to do something. I believe that I can't judge you off your mistake. You're human. A human can't judge a human because I can just do the same damage as you as well. But a young cop, don't let that mess you up. Let that be a teaching moment so you can take that with you in the long run. Because then when you have another person that you may have to train, or you're in that training and they're on the road or on the field with you, they can get that perspective saying, hey, I did the same exact thing as you. I did the same. I pulled over the wrong person, or I gunned someone down. That wasn't even the right person to get. But don't feel bad. Apologize. Make sure that next time you go out there, you make the right decision, but make sure you keep that integrity within yourself. Know your values and know the morals that you stand for.
Awesome. One of the experiences that I have is a few officers who are retired. They say, "Young man, I'm so proud of you." Unfortunately, I didn't wake up till after I retired, or I didn't wake up till much later in my career, and I was out there doing things that deep inside, I knew it was wrong, but I just kind of went along with the flow. I went along with the game, and I'm so proud of you. Every time you're out there doing your thing, I'm like, hopefully young officers are listening. So I'm glad that you answered that question the way you did, only because some people don't think that it's possible. Where the cancel culture is kind of big right now. It's like no one's allowed to make any mistakes. It's very unrealistic. Now, granted, we do have to think about the mistakes that cops make. Some people lose their lives because of it. Some people's lives are forever derailed. Families are torn apart, annihilated, and we do need some form of restitution. But people do wake up, and I'm glad you can realize that, because honestly, had that not been possible, then my work would be in vain. That means this thing can't change, and the reality is it can, because people can wake up.
And I think that's the biggest thing too. That's why I spoke with mental health, the mental well-being of officers, because you guys have to put up with so much.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot to endure.
Yeah.
And you have so many people that's like, you can't change. Once you kill that person, you're done. It's over. Like the whole world just ended. And it's like the mental stage of knowing what you just did was wrong.
Yeah.
And then you have some people that's just like, just soak it up, and you feel it, and you just feel disgusted with yourself, or you just lay in the dark sometimes, and you're like, I just don't want to look at myself. I just want to die. And you shouldn't have to feel that type of burden. As an officer, you should feel as though that you're making true change in your community. But once you start feeling that and that type of agony, it starts to develop a serious problem where anything will tick you off, or anything will make you upset, or if the wrong person speaks to you, they're automatically now on that list. And that's why I said the crime rate doesn't always come from just that community. Sometimes it comes from what's being put into the community. And we have to develop a new system of how we train and operate with officers. So that's the biggest thing.
Awesome.
So that's the biggest thing. And right now we're going to take a question from our viewers. Okay. There seems to be a disconnection between our officers and the communities they serve. What are your thoughts on mentoring the program that prepares officers and acts at risk with our youth that will put our youth together? How can these programs bridge this disconnection better?
I mean, I'm supportive of such programs, but I just don't know if it's enough to really bridge that gap. One of the things that I've realized in law enforcement is we shouldn't make it to the point that we're about to start the academy with certain views. We need to restructure our society as Americans to eradicate a lot of the thinking early. You know, I believe in implicit bias training. Everyone is susceptible to implicit bias. And if we can start understanding that a lot of the, knee-jerk thoughts that we have when we see a person or a particular neighborhood, if we could understand the history behind it, why these thoughts happen, and the fact that they're rooted in the way our society is structured and not in fact, and understand just the primitive parts of the brain. With little information, your brain tries to make the most sense of what it's dealing with. When you don't have anything specific, you're going to go with, unfortunately, stereotypes at times. It happens to everyone, but we can correct those thoughts because we should correct those thoughts because they could lead to bad actions. So just more focused on the question, I support such programs. I think the at-risk youth, they get the most out of it, and the cops also, because it humanizes these young folks. But at the same time, from what I've observed, it's still not enough to bridge the gap. We need as less of a gap as possible before the person ever even enters the uniform.
And I 100% agree with you on that note, because a lot of times you hear the officer saying, well, we have to change this, or you don't know this. And it's like, if we're not being taught, or if someone's not telling us, what's really going on, then how would that communication or that connection between officers ever occur? Will it ever be real? Will it be realistic? If we're not being, or if we're not getting realistic answers or realistic questions, will those type of things ever come to a true connection between officers and their community? Because at the same time, the communities are what you live in. Sometimes your family are in that community. Sometimes, it's different issues and different problems, but, trying to overcome it and make it a better place for generations to come is the key.
Awesome. I agree.
Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant Raymond, for joining us. And thank you to our sponsors, CenterState Bank, Ben & Jerry's, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Central Florida, the Verdi EcoSchool, and Hey Blue Initiative. Thank you all so much again. This was Lieutenant Edwin Raymond. He is the GOAT. He is certified. He is making a difference in New York. He is making change, and I'm so proud, and it was an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
The question we have for you is, do you still have love for me?
Come on, more than you know, man. All right. Thanks for having me. This was a great experience.
Thank you for coming on.
All right.
And everyone, you guys have a great night, and thank you.
Take care.